All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am Andy. I'm with Integrity Data Insights, and I help companies grow by helping improve their reporting and their analytics. And I'm honored to have Ben Hackley with me today. And his company is CFO to Grow, Fractional CFO. I love that company name. We are just talking about it. So Ben, just welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Andy. I look forward to this. Thanks for having me and the offer. What I do, I like to work with small businesses and help them improve their cash flow, understand where they are today, and help them grow towards the future in a more profitable, productive manner. So, yeah, I look forward to this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you kind of, you've having a real extensive background in finance. You've worked with big companies, small companies. You've been an employer, been kind of on your own. Tell me, about how did you decide to kind of work with more of the small, mid-sized businesses, and just tell me more about that journey and why you
Yeah,
chose
sure.
that path.
Yeah, I've been in the accounting finance field my whole career. I've been in normally I'm a CPA, but I've never practiced public accounting. I just had to stick with it as at one point in my life to pass a pretty extensive exam. But
Yeah.
I've been in the corporate world most of my career, from Fortune 500 to private equity companies, small business companies in CFO and controller roles. And about, oh, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, a friend of mine was starting a business and he asked me if I would help him on the side with some accounting and help him get it up. And I said yes. And then 10 minutes after I said that, I thought, oh, why did I say yes? What have I done? What have I done? And actually, it was the best thing I've
Yeah.
ever done. Once I started working
Okay.
with him, I learned that I just truly love the small business world. I loved being out of the corporate bureaucracy. In the small business world, I can deal directly with the owner, focus
Yeah.
directly on the problem. That owner makes a decision. He doesn't have to go through a chain of command and 6 months later, decisions made. So it's just a
Yeah.
totally different environment. It's real refreshing. And I like how, you can have a business problem and 10 different owners will attack it 10 different ways. Um, so
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
just, I like the creativity, the freshness of it, excitement of it. I just love working with small businesses and small business owners.
Oh,
So,
great.
with that, after doing that for about 8 or 9 years, about 3 years ago, sort of at a crossroads where I was doing freelance on the side while working in the corporate world, and the freelance work had grown to the point where I was forking the road. I could either continue doing both, or I decided to leave the corporate world and do this full time. So, best move I ever made, and I love it.
Oh, great. And I think, from what I understand too, you've worked with quite a bit of manufacturing companies. Is that right? Or that's
I
kind of a
do now.
very
I'm kind of focusing on that now. When I first started doing this, I would do any company just because I love the variety of it. I did
yeah.
everything from entertainment companies to temp agencies to doctors' offices. I mean, just across the board.
Yeah.
Um, but now that I'm kind of honing in on the manufacturing and
Yeah.
distribution world because that's where all my experience is. That's where my background comes from.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great. So I guess tell me a little bit about what situations, clients call on you for. I mean, what kind of situation are they in? What are they looking for from you?
I'll tell you. I'll give you four examples. Two examples I try to avoid, and two examples that I kind of latch on to. I get a lot of inquiries around March. People realize, oh, I've got to do my taxes. I don't have any books for last year, so
Oh,
I get a
yeah.
lot of inquiries. I need help pulling my books together for last year so I can get my taxes done. I kind of avoid. I did that work at the start because I was doing anything I could get my hands on, but I
Right.
kind of shy away from that now because, in my experience, a client like that looks at what I do as a necessary evil, not as a benefit to their company.
Right.
So that's not the kind of person I want to work with. And also, people also come to me with they need bookkeeping help because they've started their business, they've been doing it themselves for 2 or 3 years, and realize they may or may not be doing it right. They want a professional to come in and look. And I have a couple of people that work with me, so I will take on, like bookkeeping roles, get their books in order and like that. But where I like to focus my time are on people that really want my experience and advice to help their business improve. I get a lot of questions where people come to me where, my business is doing great, sales are growing, but I never have any money in the bank. I never have any cash. What's going on? Am I profitable?
Right.
Am I not profitable? Um, and so that's the type of thing I like to do. And when people realize that it's good to have an outsider looking in to give them an unbiased opinion on how they're doing. Are they making the right decisions? What can they change to improve their cash flow? Things like that. That's where my
Right.
experience really has some value to small
Right.
businesses.
And do most of them kind of take, I mean, is it I'm guessing you have to have some kind of hard conversations, right? If somebody's kind of doing something, and you kind of have to point
Yeah,
out, so can that be a little bit challenging to kind of, if you
yes
have
and
to
no.
deliver bad news or
Yeah. Yes and no. Some of them have a good feel that something's just not right here. Something's not working, and they kind of think this is what the problem is, but they're looking for somebody like me to kind of say, yeah, that's what your
right,
problem is. I've
right,
I've I've very rarely gotten any negative pushback in the form of recommending something to improve on or pointing out a problem
right.
that I usually get buy-in on, yeah, that they agree that's the problem. Where the negotiation part comes in, okay, how do you address the problem, right?
Yeah,
Identifying the problem is pretty usually fairly simple. The tough part is addressing the problem, because addressing the problem may involve, depending on the problem, it could involve tough decisions, cost reductions, headcount reductions, changing
right,
their sales channel, new softwares. There's a whole variety of change that is never easy that needs to
right.
be done to address the problem. So that's where some of the good discussions come in.
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks for that. That's great. Um, and when we were talking before, I mean, you've kind of seen like a lot of these small businesses, small to mid businesses, they overcomplicate things. You're saying, um, and you think, sometimes you said they kind of bring in their, some things from the past with them. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen on that side and how that goes.
Yeah, they from a few different angles. Some businesses, they overcomplicate, and it starts at the beginning. Okay, I got a business, I need a bank account, so they go into a bank, and the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, worst thing you can do is ask a bank, how should I set up my banking?
Yeah,
Because you walk out of the bank with five different bank accounts.
yeah,
They tell you how much they focus on security, and how your data is your money's secure, and it's the safest bank in the block. But then on the other hand, they say, okay, you need a bank account for money to come into. You need a bank account to pay out your payroll. You need a bank account to
oh
pay out
wow,
your operating expenses. You need to move your money around to make it harder for somebody to get in your accounts and take your money. And I've been
that's
doing this for 30 years, and I've never seen somebody with one account any worse off security wise. So a
right.
lot of companies like that, they
Yeah.
overcomplicate their banking, and they spend a lot of time playing this shell game of moving money. Oh, I got payroll no more. I got to move money over to the payroll account. So it's
Yeah.
constantly moving money around, to no real benefit. There's used to be a TV show. I could name that tune and
Oh,
name that
yeah.
song with three notes or whatever.
Yeah,
I
yep,
always like
yep.
to say, I can run that business with three accounts. You know,
Right.
you need a cash account, a credit card, and a line of credit. That's all you need.
Yeah.
But
I
but
wondered
building
too
upon oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Ben.
I said building upon that. I mean, if you a lot of people try to manage their business, manage their cash by way of these various bank accounts, which is the wrong approach. And there's a profit first methodology out there that says, you take X percentage of your incoming cash and set it aside for a rainy day in an account. Well, in theory, that sounds good, but it never works. because I knew a guy that did that. I would look at a seminar, read the book, but he got all excited and had his first week of cash coming in. He put $100 over in this account, and next thing you know, he had 150 in the account. And 3 weeks later, said, "Oh, I need that 150 for something else." So 4 or 5 years later, that account had $50 still sitting in it. So
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, just the complications too of all the transactions moving back and forth between a bunch of
yeah,
accounts. Like that can't
yeah,
be, that's not.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that makes
But
sense
I think,
too.
but I think to avoid the overcomplication, I think every business should have a long-term strategic plan, right? Or strategic goal. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be in 7 to 10 years?
Mhm.
What do you want to do with this business? And then
Right,
work backwards from there. And that with a good strategic plan, it'll help you build focus into your company. These are the 4 or 5 things I need to do to make my plan a success. And if you have that focus and you have these objectives and you stick to those, it helps you eliminate this constant trying something new every month, right? Oh,
right.
what I tried last month didn't work. Let me try something else. And so I see people constantly doing that. They've been in business for 12 months and they have no real core focus to the business. They're just jumping from one bucket to the next. And every new thing they see on the internet is a new idea they can roll into their business. So
Yeah.
you gotta have some type of strict plan and a focus for your business with and and at a high level, understand your core business, your cost structure. Um,
Mhm.
you gotta intuitively know, um, every month got to pay $20,000 for rent, utilities,
Yeah,
insurance, payroll. I got this set fixed cost every month I got to cover. My sales have a profit of 50% on every sales dollar, has a gross profit of 50%. So you got to understand that overall cost structure
right,
and and run your business within those rules. And a lot of
right,
another issue I see is a lot of small business owners like me, like you, like all of us, at one point worked in the corporate world, and they decided, well, I'm going to leave the corporate world and
right,
do my own thing. Well, they bring a lot of those corporate world bad habits into the small business.
right.
Like, well, this is how the big guys do it, so I must have to do this.
Yeah,
One of those is like setting an annual budget. I got to go through a budget process and spend 5 6 months out of every year setting the budget for the next year. You need to kind of leave the corporate world behind, learn from it, take what you've learned to help your business, but don't try to copy a big corporation operation into your small business. It'll
yeah.
really
That's
overcomplicate.
fascinating. I remember when you first told me that, I was thinking, "Wow, this is a financial guy telling me, that budgets are overrated." And I was, obviously, I was very intrigued by that. So maybe tell me more about what you recommend instead. I think,
Yeah,
if somebody doesn't do an annual budget or that kind of thing, what's a good strategy for them?
well, it gets back to having that long-term strategic plan for your business. And it's good to have a sales goal. Okay, I want to be at 10 million in 10 years, or whatever that number might be. And you set up a plan and goals to get there. And then once you have that, then set targets, set annual targets. I'm not talking about a full-blown budget down to how many rolls of toilet paper you have to buy every month. I'm just talking about,
Right.
okay, if I want to get to 10 million in 10 years, I'll do, I'll start out 500,000 this year, maybe 1.2 next, have just some
Yeah.
top level goals. And like I said earlier, and understand your cost structure in terms of what's your gross profit on those sales, what are your fixed costs that you have to cover. Um,
Yeah, so you're not
and-
like recommending that somebody doesn't have that. You're just saying like making it like I think you mentioned to me before. It's like, a lot of times people spend a ton of time comparing, right? Like, okay, this month, what, compared to the budget, we were supposed to have 100,000 and now we're, at 150, and you kind of end up in this world where you're constantly comparing and that kind of thing, right?
yeah, that's where dislike for budgets come in because I'm literally in the corporate world. We would spend half of the year. We would start budgeting in July for the next year,
Right.
maybe August, but that budget wouldn't be approved until January or February. Sometimes March. You get
Right.
through the first quarter, your budget still hasn't been approved.
Yeah,
So
that's
in the corporate world, you play this constant game of okay, here's a realistic budget. I think I can do 7% more next year, right? Corporate says, well, no, your budget is 20% more. And you
yeah.
say, no way that's going to happen, 7%. And then you go through the year, you're hitting your 7%, but you get beat up because why aren't you hitting your 20% increased budget? That
Yeah.
and also you set these budgets so far in advance. I used to chuckle every month where some little analyst would ask me, your operating supplies are in October of this year are 15,000. Your budget you set was 10,000. Why is it off? Well, first off, I set that budget 15 months ago, right? Don't expect me to predict 15 months in the future how
Right,
what 1 month's
exactly.
worth of supply. So there's a lot of variability. And so what I
Yeah,
find is a more useful tool is just to constantly forecasting your business,
right.
constantly looking forward 6 to 12 months. You have your long-term strategic plan. You have these
Mhm.
targets you're trying to hit along the way, and constantly forecast your budget. I mean, oh, I said it. Forecast your business.
That's okay.
Forecast your business. Constantly forecast your business towards those targets and forecasts to give you a more real-time look. They're flexible. You can make adjustments, make changes. Um,
Right.
you're not playing a game of well, this is just a game big corporations play where well we've already met our budget for this year, so let's slow down, let's push these sales into
Oh,
next quarter,
right.
so we'll hit next quarter's budget. And I,
Right.
so
I know too, in a
it's
big corporation, there was a lot of, like, use it or lose it, right? Like, you have the money in the budget,
yeah,
like, we gotta find a way to use this money up, or we're gonna lose it next year, and I know
yeah,
that was a lot
yeah.
of big
And,
big
and
problems
it's a,
too.
I think it's an important point to point out as to why big corporations do that budgeting process. Okay, when
Yeah.
you have a huge global operation, the only way to get your hands around what everybody's doing is to have them to submit a budget. Okay, you got to submit a budget that gives us an idea of what everybody's plans are for upcoming plans are.
Right.
Um, and these large corporations need information. They need to tell the investment community something. So they need all this input from around the world to build up that story they want to tell the investment community. And bonus structures are built on people meeting those budgets, and it's just
Right.
it's just an all. I mean, it's a necessary evil, really, in a large
Right.
corporation because
Right, but
they need some way to pull the world together and do something they can tell the investment community. But when you're in a
right.
small business, your bonus is being able to feed your family. Your bonus is being able to take a vacation. Is to support yourself. So you're more self motivated for
Right.
success.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that. I know too you've talked about, like, you find sometimes business owners can be a little bit overly optimistic, where they kind of
Yeah,
maybe sometimes to their detriment. Maybe tell me more about that and your experience.
yeah. I have a lot of calls, a lot of conversations with these business owners where they put their blood, sweat, and tears into this business. A lot of times their
Right.
personal finance, their home is mortgaged with an equity
Right.
line that goes into the business. So they have a lot vested in their business, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so with that comes a lot of stress and comes a lot of what I call sometimes false optimism. They want to make it. They want so hard for it to be a success, and every problem, the solution is, well, I've just got to figure out a way to sell more, right? Because that's the optimistic path.
Yeah.
Sell more, grow my business, be a success. The path of okay, my sales are stagnant. I've hired too many people. The path of making cost cuts, laying people off, that's just a negative connotation. And a lot of times that's perceived, oh God, this is the first step towards failure, right?
I see.
But really, it's not. It's just part of running a business. You got ups and downs. You got to adjust your business accordingly. But a lot of times, business owners are very optimistic. Um,
Yeah.
and another thing I see a lot is success is just one loan away. I just need one more loan to get me around the
Uh,
corner. That's all I need. So
yeah.
you can only do that so long until your
Catches up
debt
with
payment
you.
you catches up with you, your debt payments, whatever profit you might be making, it's going to pay down the debt, and you still have no cash, and you get to a
Right.
point where if those loans are not helping you, then the bank sees right through that, and you can't get them anymore. So I see that
Yeah.
a lot optimism, and I need a loan. I need a loan. I need to take more money. Some people, I work with some people, and I really wonder what kind of business they're in. It's like they're in the fundraising business and not the, you know, whatever business they initially decided to go
Yeah.
into. It's like all they're doing is trying to raise
Oh,
money. People,
yeah. Yeah.
all these stories you hear about people, getting these millions and billions of dollars of investors and this, and you hear about that because it's rare. The normal small business doesn't just go out and knock on the bank's door and walk out with $1 million loan. Doesn't work that
Right.
way.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
so I think
absolutely.
that's where somebody like me comes in, a fractional CFO, or even a informal advisory board, a trusted friend that can be honest with you. I think every small business needs an outsider, an objective outside view looking in that
Yeah.
can kind of. I'm not saying optimism is a bad thing. I'm just saying you need a realistic look, and a lot
Right.
of times
Yeah.
a lot of times it takes an outsider to help a business owner see that.
Yeah. Oh, great. So another side of it is some of the companies, are on the other spectrum where they're really growing, they're doing really well, and
Yeah.
you found that sometimes there's other challenges with that. Tell me more about your experience in that area.
Yeah, again, it gets back to what I said earlier. A lot where some clients come to me and they say, my sales are growing, but I have no cash. So it costs money. The old adage, it costs money to make money. If your business is growing, it takes working capital to sustain that growth, especially if you're in manufacturing. You need inventory, you need to beef up your stock levels. Um, you may have to buy machine tools to increase capacity. There's a lot of investment that's required to grow a business. Um,
Right.
so you need to understand again, I keep going back to this, if you have that strategic plan with targets and a path to get there, some of
Yeah.
this growth should be kind of built in to what you're trying to do. And you have a plan to handle the growth, right? Um, but a lot of
Y-
times, if they're lucky or
y-
unlucky, however you look at it, a lot of times this success comes faster than they hope, and they're not prepared for it. And
Right.
it's very hard for a business owner to, if not turn away business, kind of mute it down a little bit so the growth is slower. Because the faster your business grows, it'll just eat right through your cash in terms of working capital and like I said,
Right.
inventory and investment.
I've heard too, you said kind of, like one thing to could think of is like, maybe a small business, maybe you were invoicing, a couple dozen or 100 people a month, and then you end up in a different world where Amazon or something else where you're
Yeah,
you're invoicing, a huge amount of people and what you used to do didn't work. So I
yeah,
thought
that's
that was
that's
really interesting.
that's a good point. A lot of people are jumping on the Amazon bandwagon because it is a good way to get your product out to tens of millions of people. It's a huge market, but it's a different business model. You can't. Um, First off, you got to understand that everything you sell on Amazon, Amazon's going to keep. I've seen anywhere from 20 to 40% Amazon
Really?
fees. So what you sell to a distributor for $100 and make a 50% profit on it, you sell that at the same product on Amazon at that same price, you're going to make a 10% profit on it. So Amazon
I
fees
see.
are quite hefty. And I don't think a lot of people realize that till they actually get into it and see it.
Right.
And then another thing, just the volume alone is if you're used to doing business through a distribution network or through large corporate partners, where okay, I'll invoice this guy for $10,000 for a
Right.
quantity of 5,000 pieces. Well, now you're going to a world where you're invoicing or shipping $100 pieces to 1,000 people, right?
Right.
And you can't process paperwork the same way for those 1,000 invoices that you do for the one invoice you send for $10,000 to a distributor. You got to
Right.
look at Amazon more of a bucket. You know, this is my I do $10,000 a month to Amazon and try to record it as a
Com-
huge bucket of business, not 1,000 transactions. Boom, and I see people try to do
right.
that, and it's I call it the push mower principle, where you buy your first house and have a lawn. First thing you do, you got to go out and buy a little push mower and you're mowing the grass. And
Right.
then
Yep.
next thing you know, 4 or 5 years down the road, you've been successful. You've moved up a couple times. Now you got a house that may have an acre lot, and you're still out there with that little push mower trying to mow that thing. And your weekends go by the wayside. But
Yeah.
you got to adapt your processes for what your business is doing. Um, and
That's a great.
another problem I see is people start to grow. They bring on new people too quickly. There's a lot of times they have instinct of, well, my business is bigger.
Right.
I've got all this extra work. I need more people. Let's hire. And what you should be asking yourself, my business is growing. I've got all this extra work. First question is, okay, how do I do all that work with the same staff that I have? What do I have to change to where my current staff can handle this additional work?
Right.
And the answer is not always that you may need people, but you shouldn't just jump right in. And the Amazon was a good example. I'm now processing 1,000 invoices a month. I need two more people to do this. Well, no, you don't.
Right.
You need to change how you're looking at that. Um, and that's another question I get a lot is on the growth. Companies that
Yeah.
are growing is just that. When can I afford to add people? When should I add people?
Yeah.
Um, there's no magic answer, but my recommendation is always look internally first. Do you have the right people and the right jobs today to handle the growth? Has your business substantially changed? Do the processes need to change? What can you do more efficiently? What can you do internally first to avoid adding people? And then when it gets to the point of, okay, I've
Yeah.
done everything I can, I still need more people. Okay. And just gradually bring those people on and be smart about it.
Right. At least it kind of forces you to kind of stop and pause and reflect and really think about it before you just kind of, just immediately assume that's the answer. So
Yeah.
that's really good.
Yeah. I've seen
Um,
companies do that where their business grows and they just go out and hire a bunch of people, and which is fine for about maybe 6, 12 months. Everything goes along. Then that business starts to come down. And then it gets back into that trap, like I was saying earlier about optimism, where they focus, try to sell more, and what they need to do is get rid of people. They brought
right.
too many people on in the first place.
Right. It's a lot better to kind of be strategic about who you bring in than, yeah, because
Yeah,
nobody really likes getting rid of people.
yeah,
Definitely.
and that's
So
where temp agencies have some value, because if you have uh, a short term need, it's better to use a temp agency because they're in the business of, okay, I need somebody for a month, I need somebody for three
right.
months. They've got a constant funnel of people that come and go,
Yeah.
and okay, I don't need this person anymore. It's a lot easier to tell a temp agency that than to
Yeah.
bring somebody in your office and close your door and tell them, I don't need you
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Great point. I mean, from a cost point of view, might be a little bit more for a short period of time, but it's yeah, it
anymore.
can be worth it for for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one final question I wanted to ask Ben is just, and this has been Fabulous. Cash flow is obviously what so many businesses face, that, issues with trying to manage that. Maybe just walk through, some recommendations, some stories you have of things that have gone well, and maybe that can
Yeah,
help other small to mid businesses with that.
yeah. Where cash flow is a real challenge, and this is something a business owner needs to understand is your what are your business cycles? Is your business cyclical, right? And how you manage that cash over the course of those cycles, right? Perfect example is somebody that's in the Christmas tree farm business, right?
Yeah.
Probably 80% of their business is in a 4 week period between
Right.
before Thanksgiving and Christmas. So they gotta make that business, make that cash that comes in for those 4 weeks. They gotta manage that so it lasts until the next year. I mean, 12
Right.
months. They may have a few little things going on. They may sell some, seed saplings to people for their lawns or whatever. But so you got to understand your business cycles and understand the variability in your cash needs. You'll have a fixed need for your fixed costs, like I mentioned earlier, rent, utilities, people, et cetera. You got a certain bucket of costs you got to pay out every month.
Hmm.
And you really have to manage that based on the business cycles of your incoming cash from your sales. Now, if your business is not cyclical, it's pretty steady. You still need to ask, okay, what if? What if my business drops 10 to 15%? Do I have enough cash in reserves to cover that fixed cost every month until business picks back up? Or I take these actions that new product introductions, et cetera.
Right.
And that also gets back to really understanding your cost structure, understand what those fixed costs are, understand what your profit is on your sales, and just understanding the ins and outs of your cash needs. And part of that is also understanding your working capital needs, your work, your inventory. What are your payment terms with your receivables, your customers favorable to what you got to pay your suppliers? So if your customers aren't paying you for 45 days, but you have 15-day terms with your suppliers,
Yeah.
right there you got a problem. You got to cover that 30-day gap somewhere. So you have to have excess cash. That's where lines of credit come in handy. But
Hmm.
so you need to really understand your cash cycle, which is that cycle from the point I have to pay a supplier. How long is it until I get that cash? Pay a supplier, get raw materials or whatever. I manufacture a product, I ship it and I sell it. I get those funds from the customer. How long is that cash cycle? So you need to understand those type of things with your business, and that really goes a long way towards helping you put together a cash forecast. And that's another thing. Back on the forecast I mentioned earlier is not only a
Yeah.
income statement forecast, it's an income statement, cash flow forecast, and a balance sheet. You got to understand all the aspects of the business. Um, so you got to constantly forecast your business, constantly forecast your cash inflows and outflows. And I have people, depending on how tight your cash situation is, some people forecast this on a weekly basis. Some people that have more of a cushion maybe forecast it on a monthly basis, but you need some type of forward-looking method to get your handle around cash and look at things like, oh, okay, I know I have an annual insurance premium for $20,000 due in March,
Right.
right? You got to know that, and you have to have that built into a cash forecast so you can have all these, try to minimize these little surprises.
Yeah.
And another one that gets lost in the shuffle are taxes. People go throughout the year and don't even
Oh,
think anything about taxes, and all of a sudden their taxes are done, and boom, they got $100,000 tax bill, no money in the bank.
yeah.
So
That's
that's
not a
another
great.
one. Just like paying an insurance bill, you got to plan on paying taxes quarterly, and you need a good CPA or tax person to kind of guide you through that process to make sure you don't shoot yourself in the foot. And I
Yeah.
get it, man. It's really hard to put money away for stuff like that, taxes. I mean, you get you have a good month, you have good cash flow. You know, oh man,
Yeah,
I can do so many things with this bucket
it's
of
not
money.
the
I can increase my advertising. I could do this. I could do a new product development. But you got to pay the tax man first. You got to set that money aside, or you'll be in a world of
right.
hurt.
Unfortunately, nobody's like, "Yes, I got, that big sale. I can pay my taxes right away." And
Yeah,
so, yeah,
yeah,
but it's obviously it definitely bites you if you don't have that, thought. So, yeah, well,
yeah. And
thanks.
yeah. And one other thing we didn't talk about, I want to mention that
Yeah, go ahead. That's great.
another thing that kind of gets not pushed under the carpet. A lot of times it's just not even a thought, which is very important for a small business, which is internal controls. Um,
Yeah,
I see a lot of people that they don't want to do the bookkeeping. They've done it for a few years. They've had it. They don't even want to touch it anymore. So
yeah,
they bring somebody in and turn it all over to them. Here, hire Charlie, and Charlie's going to do everything. He's going to call my customers. He's going to invoice my customers. He's going to collect from them. He's going to pay them my bills. That's the last thing you want to do. If I understand a small business, a lot of times it's small and you don't have the
mhm,
personnel to really segregate duties. But in a case like that, the owner has to stay in tune with what's going on. He has to
uh,
approve, you know, be active in whatever software you're using. Approve new customers that are added to the system. Approve new suppliers that are added to the system. Constantly
nice.
asking, who are these people? Are they legit? Same way with payroll. Approve payroll. Make sure the 10 people you have, the 10 people you think you have, are the 10 people that you're paying. And approve bank recs. And so an owner, and the smaller you are, the more involved the owner needs to be, obviously. But the
Right.
owner needs to stay in tune with those things, and he also needs to keep his ear open and be on the lookout for suspicious type activity. I'm not saying don't trust
Yeah,
your employees at all. I'm
right.
saying that if your bookkeeper that you're paying $18 an hour, always struggling to complaining about making ends meet every month, all of a sudden he
Yeah.
drives up in a brand new Mercedes. You got to start
Something
asking yourself, wait a
right.
minute, something's not, or you hear a conversation about this guy. I'm putting a pool in my backyard. I can't wait for
Yeah.
the pool. You got to start
Wait a
asking
minute.
yourself, wait a minute, what am I missing here? So again, I'm not
Right.
saying don't trust your employees at all. I'm just saying, as a business owner, you got to be prudent and you got to look out for your money, because I've seen it. I've seen it happen, and
Yeah.
it
It sounds like
starts
a
out
good
very
balance.
small.
Sounds like a
I've
good
seen it.
balance is, having somebody like you involved and kind of but still don't, like, check out and be like, "Hey, that guy's handling it. I don't need to even think about it now." Like, you still
Yeah,
should ask questions. You still should, you know, maybe you're not in there doing the journal entries, but you at least kinda know you have your pulse on it enough to
yeah.
know what's going on.
Yeah. And with that, though, a business owner needs to educate themselves at some level on how to read financial statements, so they can look at an income statement or a balance sheet, and see when something doesn't look right. Um, and a lot of times that will not only help them make their business more profitable, but that fraud could be detected that way as well if you're reviewing your financials. And also, a business owner should educate themselves on taxes. They need to, when they turn their books over to the tax guy. Tax guy does their taxes. Here's your tax return. The business owner shouldn't just sign it and say, "Great." They need to really look at it and understand how their income
Yeah.
they thought they were making all year long, because a lot of times your book income and your tax income are two different things. So a business owner
Right.
needs to understand that tax return, and just and that's in my opinion, that's the difference between a good business owner and a bad one or a mediocre one. They don't educate themselves on these key areas, about the financial aspects of their business.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely tried to do that with my own business too. It's like, just not going crazy with it, but like, like
Right.
with the taxes when I go through it, like it's always interesting to just kind of walk through and see like, oh, wait a minute, just kind of to understand kind of how it goes. I
Yeah.
know there's been like a saying where people, that pay their taxes through the their escrow with their home mortgage and stuff. And if people really knew what they were paying, there'd be a revolt. But so same kind of idea. But well, Ben, it's been such great having you on. If people want to get a hold of you or work with you more, what's the best way? I know I can see your website there, but is there any other?
Yeah, sure. My website there is CFO dash to grow. That's dash minus sign dash and two, the number two. So CFO dash to grow.com. And my email is ben at CFO dash to grow.com. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to help you, walk you through, listen to what you have to say, and I don't charge for any type of phone calls. So
yeah,
unless you start to abuse me, then we'll talk.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Ben. This has been a privilege having you on, and I know it's going to help so many other small business and medium-sized businesses kind of think things different way. And yeah, please reach out to Ben if you need more help in this area. And otherwise, thanks so much for joining us. And stay tuned. There'll be more episodes. And thanks so much, Ben, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Andy. We'll talk later.
All right. Take care.